The arena did not demand courage, it demanded obedience. In ancient Rome, thousands of people gathered beneath towering stone walls to watch something disturbingly simple: a human being ordered to kill another human being. And when the defeated fighter raised a trembling finger, begging for mercy, the crowd waited, not for compassion, but for a decision: live or die. For most gladiators, this moment was terrifying. But for female gladiators, it carried something far heavier than fear. Because if a woman in the arena refused to deliver the killing blow, Rome did not see mercy. Rome saw betrayal. And in a civilization obsessed with discipline, honor, and spectacle, betrayal had a price that went far beyond the sword. To understand why, we have to step into the mind of Rome itself, because female gladiators were never meant to exist. Roman society was built on rigid expectations. Men were trained for war, politics, and power. Women were expected to embody modesty, obedience, and domestic virtue. The Roman ideal woman remained invisible in public life. She raised children, managed the household, preserved family honor. But the moment a woman stepped into the arena, all of that collapsed. The arena was the most public space in the empire, and the gladiator was not simply a fighter. He was a symbol: strength, violence, control over life and death. When women appeared in the arena during the 1st century CE, they immediately disrupted this entire structure. The Romans even gave them a name: gladiatrices. To the crowds, they were fascinating, almost surreal, a spectacle that mixed admiration with discomfort. Poets wrote about them with equal parts excitement and disgust. The Roman satirist Juvenal mocked women who trained with weapons, asking what modesty could remain in a woman who wore a helmet and rejected her own sex. To conservative Romans, a woman fighting in the arena represented a deep cultural anxiety. She had crossed a boundary. Yet paradoxically, the crowds loved it. The spectacle of women fighting created curiosity, controversy, and attention. The very ingredients Roman entertainment thrived on. Under certain emperors, female gladiators became a popular attraction. Emperor Nero encouraged them openly. Historical records describe women fighting in elaborate spectacles, designed purely to shock and entertain. Later, Emperor Domitian took things even further. He staged nighttime gladiator battles lit by torches, where female fighters clashed beneath flickering flames. Sometimes he forced them into bizarre contests designed to provoke laughter as much as violence. But behind the spectacle was something much darker. Because once a woman entered the gladiatorial system, she stopped being a person. She became property. Gladiators were owned by trainers known as lanistae. These men ran gladiator schools called ludi, where fighters trained under strict discipline. Training began before sunrise. Wooden swords, endless drills, repetition until the body moved automatically. Pain was expected, exhaustion was normal, and death was always waiting. When someone became a gladiator, they swore an oath known as the sacramentum gladiatorum. Its words were chilling. I will endure to be burned, to be bound, to be beaten, and to be killed by the sword. This oath erased personal freedom. A gladiator's body no longer belonged to them. It belonged to the arena. And the arena had rules. The most sacred rule was simple: you obey. If ordered to fight, you fight. If ordered to kill, you kill. And if ordered to die, you die. For male gladiators, this brutal code was seen as a twisted form of honor. Romans admired their courage, even while treating them as social outcasts. But female gladiators existed in a far more fragile position. They had already violated Roman gender expectations simply by entering the arena. Their legitimacy depended on proving they could fight like men. Strength, discipline, ruthlessness. So when a female gladiator hesitated, when she refused to deliver the final strike, the reaction was immediate. The crowd did not see compassion. They saw weakness, and worse, they saw hypocrisy. In Roman eyes, these women had already abandoned their traditional roles. They had stepped into the violent world of men. But if they refused to complete the violence, it meant they had neither feminine virtue nor masculine courage. They were something else entirely. Something Roman society did not know how to tolerate. And this is where the arena revealed its true nature. Because the games were never about sport, they were about control. The crowd came expecting resolution. Someone had to win. Someone had to die. A fighter who disrupted that structure threatened the entire spectacle. If one gladiator refused to kill, others might begin questioning the system. So Rome responded in the only way it knew how, with punishment, immediate, public, unforgettable. When a gladiator refused to follow orders, their legal status changed. Instantly, they were no longer competitors. They became condemned criminals. Guards would rush into the arena, weapons taken, armor stripped away, the defiant fighter dragged out before the roaring crowd. And from that moment forward, their fate was no longer determined by rules. It was determined by imagination. Because Roman punishment in the arena was not simply about death. It was about spectacle. Executions usually occurred during the midday portion of the games. This was the least prestigious time of day, the interval between morning, animal hunts, and the grand gladiator matches of the afternoon. But what happened during midday was often the most disturbing. This was when condemned criminals were executed. For entertainment, some were forced into staged mythological reenactments. Others were simply thrown into impossible situations designed to prolong fear and anticipation. A gladiator who had refused to kill might be brought back into the arena, without armor, without weapons, without protection. Sometimes they were tied to wooden stakes in the center of the sand. Then the animals were released. Lions, leopards, bears, often starved deliberately, so their hunger made them aggressive. The crowd watched as the animals approached, slowly circling their prey. The waiting could last minutes, sometimes longer. And this waiting was part of the punishment. Fear was the real spectacle. Other executions turned into theatrical performances. The Romans loved mythology, and they often transformed punishments into reenactments of famous legends. A condemned woman might be forced to play the role of Dirce, a figure from Greek myth who was tied to a bull and dragged to death. Or she might be dressed as one of the Danaids, mythological women condemned to eternal punishment. The audience recognized the story. They understood the symbolism, and this intellectual layer made the violence feel culturally justified. Another form of punishment involved forced combat under impossible conditions. A defiant gladiator might be thrown back into the arena against multiple opponents. But instead of real weapons, she might be given a wooden sword. Her attackers would not kill her immediately. They would prolong the fight, strike carefully, avoid fatal blows. The purpose was endurance, watching how long she could survive, how long she could resist, each wound slower than the last, each movement weaker, until the weapon finally slipped from exhausted hands. Only then would the real swords finish the spectacle. And sometimes the punishment became even more theatrical. Certain criminals in Rome were executed by fire. The condemned would be tied to a wooden post in the arena, wood stacked around their feet, pitch poured across the structure. Then a torch was applied. The flames climbed slowly, smoke first, then heat. Attendants stood nearby with long poles to keep the body upright if it collapsed too early. The goal was not efficiency. The goal was visibility. The entire arena had to see. But perhaps the most chilling method of punishment was crucifixion. While gladiator matches continued in the arena below, the condemned could be nailed to crosses erected in the sand. They remained there for hours, sometimes days, dying slowly, while other entertainment unfolded around them. A living warning to every other gladiator watching. This was the message. Obedience. Or this. By the late 2nd century, female gladiators had become controversial, even within Roman society. Many senators believed the spectacle degraded Roman values. So in the year 200 CE, Emperor Septimius Severus issued a decree banning women from fighting as gladiators. But the ban did not mean freedom. It simply stopped new women from entering the arena. Those already bound by contracts remained slaves. Their owners still controlled their fate. And many Lanistae faced a sudden financial problem. Female gladiators were expensive to train. Without arena fights, they no longer generated profit, so many were sold. Some ended up in brothels. Others were sent to mines or forced labor camps. And some were executed in final spectacles designed to recover the last possible value from a dying investment. After this point, the historical record grows strangely silent. Archaeological evidence of female gladiators disappears. The statues stop. The oil lamps stop. The inscriptions stop. The women themselves vanish from history. Their names mostly lost. Their stories erased. Today, tourists walk through the ruins of the Colosseum and admire Roman engineering. The underground chambers, the trapdoors, the elevators that lifted animals and fighters into the arena. But those stone walls once echoed with the roar of 50,000 spectators. People cheering, laughing, debating life and death like it was part of the afternoon entertainment. And this may be the most disturbing truth of all. Rome did not see itself as cruel. To them, this was justice, order, tradition, the natural consequence of breaking